While millions of Americans remain locked into 30-year mortgages, three very different houses have quietly started appearing in scattered corners of the United States. What stands out isn't just their unusual design, but the price. We're talking about figures that represent a fraction of what anyone would imagine paying for a home of their own today. The strangest part is that even with such attractive numbers, almost no one is buying. Not because there's a lack of interest, and certainly not because these are poorly designed projects. The explanation lies elsewhere, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack in this video. But before we get there, it's worth understanding where this trend came from and exactly what these three houses are that have been quietly dividing opinion across the country. If you've ever thought about living closer to family, cutting down on fixed costs, or simply having more financial freedom in retirement, what comes next could completely change the way you look at the American housing market. The first 3D printed house we'll look at is the Icon House Zero, built using a concrete printing method that has revolutionized the way people think about affordable housing in the United States. Unlike traditional construction, this model is built by a robotic arm that lays down layer after layer of special concrete until it forms the home's entire walls. No bricks, no wooden forms, none of the waste you'd find in a conventional build. What makes this model so interesting isn't just the technique, but the final result. We're talking about a complete, functional, move-in ready house for a cost of just $10,000. That's less than what many people pay today for a used car in good condition, and a fraction of what it would cost to build the same structure using traditional brick-and-mortar methods. The floor plan for this model was designed to be simple and extremely functional. A single story, no stairs, no unnecessary rooms, and no wasted space. Every square foot has a clear purpose, which makes moving around the house easier, reduces the risk of falls, and cuts down on daily physical strain. For anyone over 60 or approaching that stage of life, this kind of lean, functional layout tends to weigh far more heavily in a buying decision than any aesthetic detail. Another point few people know is that this 3D printed house model isn't fragile, despite being so affordable. Printed concrete tends to be more resistant to cracking, moisture, and certain natural disasters than a lot of conventional wood frame construction. In other words, the low price doesn't mean lower quality, it just means a smarter, more efficient building process. Over time, this model became a reference point for an entire new generation of 3D printed construction in the United States. Based on it, tech companies and builders began developing similar variations, keeping the same low-cost functional logic. Even so, this specific model remains largely unknown outside the construction industry. Few retirees have ever heard of it, and even fewer know it's available as the basis for other similar projects, some even more affordable and better suited to everyday life. The second 3D printed house we'll look at is the Azure Printed Homes model, developed in Southern California, with a slightly different approach than the first. While the previous model uses traditional concrete, this one is printed from recycled material, mainly plastic bottles and packaging, that would otherwise end up in landfills. The result is a solid structure, resistant to moisture and weather, built from a material almost no one would associate with a real house. This model costs around $35,000, a price range that already puts it in a very different bracket from the traditional American housing market. For comparison, that's an amount many families spend just on the down payment for a conventional mortgage. And here, we're talking about the entire house ready to move into. The idea behind this model isn't to replace a family's main house, but to complement the lot where they already live. Designed as a backyard support unit, this 3D printed house model allows, for example, an elderly parent to live close to their children or grandchildren without having to share the same roof every day. This preserves everyone's privacy, maintains the older residents' independence, and at the same time keeps family just steps away in case of need. Like the previous model, this one also eliminates stairs and minimizes wasted space within the floor plan. Maintenance is practically non-existent, since the recycled material used in printing doesn't suffer from termites, doesn't crack easily, and doesn't require frequent painting the way traditional wood or masonry does. That means less worry and less ongoing expense for those at a stage in life when financial simplicity matters more than ever. What stands out about this 3D printed house model is precisely the silence surrounding it. It has been available for years, tested, approved, and built on different properties across the country. Yet, retiree communities barely talk about this option. Most families who could directly benefit from this model have simply never heard that it exists as a real, affordable alternative. The third 3D printed house we'll look at is the Passive Dom Module 1, and it sets itself apart from the previous two for one simple reason. It doesn't depend on anything external to function. While the earlier models still need a connection to the power grid and the public water system, this one was designed to live completely off the grid, what experts call an off-grid system. In practice, this means the house generates its own energy through solar panels installed on the roof, treats and reuses its own water through an internal collection and filtration system, and also features reinforced thermal insulation that keeps the interior temperature stable on both very hot and very cold days. The direct result is zero electric bills and minimal dependence on public utilities, something that represents considerable monthly savings for any retiree living on a fixed income. This model starts at around $64,000, a bit higher than the previous two, but justified by the built-in technology and the total independence the house offers. Unlike many alternative construction projects, this model can be ordered directly by anyone in the United States, with no wait list, no selection process, and no additional bureaucracy beyond a standard purchase. Interestingly, this 3D printed house model has already racked up more than 8,000 pre-orders around the world, a number that clearly shows international demand is already well established. Even so, within the American market itself, most people have never heard of the name, which is surprising. Given the size of the interested customer base this model has already built up globally. Like the previous models, this one also eliminates stairs, keeps the floor plan on a single level, and drastically reduces the physical effort needed to live comfortably at home. The difference is that here, independence goes beyond the physical structure and extends all the way to basic energy and water infrastructure, offering an extra level of freedom for anyone looking to simplify life in retirement without giving up comfort. 3D printed house models. 3 different price ranges. And yet, one thing they all have in common: almost nobody knows these models exist as a real, affordable option within the American market. The Icon House Zero showed it's possible to build a functional house for $10,000. The Azure Printed Homes model proved that even recycled material can become a solid, durable home for $35,000. And the Passive Dom Module 1 went even further, delivering total energy and water independence for around $64,000. Each of these models solves a different problem, but they all share the same underlying logic: fewer stairs, less wasted space, less maintenance, and lower ongoing costs. Exactly what tends to weigh most heavily on a retiree or a family thinking about their parents' future when deciding where and how to live? What's truly striking isn't just the low price of each model on its own. It's realizing that this technology is already mature, tested, and available for purchase right now, while much of the public remains completely unaware of these alternatives. As more retirees start discovering these 3D printed house models, demand is likely to grow quickly, which could reduce availability and even push today's prices higher. For now, these 3 options remain out there, quietly waiting to be discovered. by those who truly need an affordable, functional solution built for this stage of life. If this kind of information helps you see the housing market in a different light, leave a like on this video. It really helps the channel keep bringing you content like this. And if you want to stay on top of the next discoveries about affordable housing in the United States, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell because there's something new here every week.